how you will experience grief is as unique as your fingerprint. There are no two people that will experience grief the same way, even though they might share the loss. How they will experience grief is very, very personalized spectrum. And it's important to mention that in grief, there is no right and wrong. And there are no timelines and there are no stereotypes. It's important that people realize that it's a unique experience. They can be supported through it, but no one can actually say that what you're feeling is wrong.
Before we start, just a quick reminder. I am not a licensed mental health professional, and this podcast is not a replacement for professional healthcare. While our guests are experts in their respective fields, the conversations shared here are for educational and entertainment purposes only and are not intended as a substitute for medical or therapeutic advice. What's shared reflects personal perspectives and experiences. And if you are struggling or need support, please seek help from a qualified professional near you. Reaching out for help is a strong and healthy step, and there is no shame in doing so. But now, let's get back to the conversation. Hello, beautiful souls. Hello, and welcome to MeTimePod. I am super excited, super grateful. This is one of our first recordings, one of our first episodes, and I'm beyond thankful for anyone who is right now listening to us, watching us, no matter where you are. So good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to MeTimePod. My name is Eliza. I am the face and the voice behind MeTimePod or in front of MeTimePod, wherever you want to put me. MeTimePod was born out of a necessity, out of personal experiences with burnout, depression, and while exploring my ADHD diagnosis. So I thought, let's talk about these topics more, because I'm sure I'm not the only one feeling alone in this journey. But this is not today's topic. Today's topic is actually something maybe not so joyful, maybe not so yippee-yay, but I do believe that we need to talk not only about these yippee-yay kind of topics, because life is full of all kinds of emotions and a range of emotions and feelings. And one of them is grief. And I'm sure one way or another, we all have experienced situations and periods of grief. And recently also I had this opportunity to lose someone. Yes, in this case, it was a cat, my best friend, my family member, but it made me think what grief actually it is, how we experience it, and how also people around us can help, how they can help us in whatever way or no way at all. But because I'm not an expert on this, I will not go into details. I do have a guest. I do have a friend with us, my friend Irene, who is, yes, as I said, friend, former colleague, current collaborator in certain way. Irene, welcome. Welcome to MeTimePod. I'm super happy to have you here. I will just give the floor to you. Just give a couple of lines about yourself. Who are you? And why also grief is a topic that you are openly talking about.
Thank you, Eliza, for the invite. We have a lot of history, and it's nice to see new ways in which we cross paths. I'm a systemic psychotherapist and a grief counselor, and I became both quite later in my professional career. So by the time I decided that was an issue that I wanted to explore, I was already in my 40s. And I had experienced my fair share of loss and grief. And of course, I had seen a lot of loss, trauma, and grief in my previous career in the field of risk, crisis, and disaster management. So it was a topic that fascinated me because nobody will escape it. It's one of the few things that you cannot protect yourself from. Some people may not marry, so they will not experience marital problems. Some people will not have children, so they will not have issues related to children upbringing. But loss and grief appears to be a universal concept for everyone at all places and throughout human history.
Thank you. You also kind of already started answering the first question I had, because I want to start from the very basics of, although, yes, we all most probably have experienced grief in one way or another, I believe there might be still lots of questions of what grief actually is. And also, probably my other question linked with this is that when we think of grief, most of the times we talk about it in the sense of death. So someone passed away, and that's the part of grief. But is that it? So how do we experience grief? What is grief in the first place?
Grief is a phenomenon very complicated in its simplicity. Basically, it's our response to loss. So we grieve things, people, places, memories, feelings, emotions that we have lost. As you said, most people associate grief with death, but that is only a very small part of what grief is. Because in our lives, we will go through a lot of what we call non death losses. So, a lot of losses that will not have to do with somebody dying, but they will have to do with menopause, for example, which is a loss. They will have to do with being laid off work or being forced to resign. There will be a loss. Even retirement with full benefits, there is an element of loss. Divorce, breakups, separations, all of them are losses. And as such, they are accompanied by grief. Even losing our hair or seeing our face change or putting on some weight or shedding some weight that we never intended to shed, those are also losses, and they are often accompanied by grief.
You mentioned hair, and I remember when I was actually 8 years old, and I had very long hair. And it was when I was 8. It was the first time I went to hairdresser, because my mom was tired of every morning braiding my hair, and it was also very painful for me. So we decided it's time. But I also remember, as funny as it sounds, that night I was crying in my pillow because of the hair that I cut. Yes, a funny example maybe, but it did sound relevant. And also, I wanted to ask you, I notice also in my experience right now, as I am doing my healing process and I'm going through all kinds of spiritual awakenings and realizations, and is it also grief what we experience in that sense? Like, let's say the grief towards our inner child, or the traumas that we experienced in the past, or let's say the time or the experiences we shouldn't have had in the first place. How is that related?
Every time we become aware of a loss, there will be grief. And how we come to the realization of a loss is usually not a linear, timely process. So it is very, very possible that people will experience grief for people, for situations they experienced in their past. And it is also quite possible that we will experience grief for things that haven't happened yet. It is also possible for us to experience grief for things that are in the near or longer future. In the sphere of possibility, it is still possible to feel grief about them once you realize that they will represent a great loss for you.
So it hasn't even happened yet, but we are already kind of in the mental space of what if we lose it? Is that correct? Did I understand?
Mhm.
Wow.
It's called anticipatory grief, and you can find it in many cases when people receive a difficult diagnosis for themselves or their loved one. It can also happen in a very, very simple moment. The first time you realize your parents, for example, are growing older, and things that they were very easy for them to do, suddenly they cannot do. Usually there is a bit of anticipatory grief there. What if they are no longer able to be independent? What if they are no longer healthy? And we start to prepare ourselves a bit or attempt to prepare ourselves a bit. But for our brains, grief only exists in the here and now. So for our brains and our cognition and our feelings, it doesn't matter if it was in the past, it is now, or it will be in the future. The pain is now, and that is all that matters.
So, okay, I wanted to ask this a little bit later, but I feel like it's actually the time now about grief and depression. How can we recognize if what we are feeling or experiencing is grief, or if it's, let's say, anxiety, depression, or something else?
That would usually be in the sphere of having also the assistance of a professional. But as a rule of thumb, if you are able to meet your basic needs. So, for example, you don't have an appetite, but you're still able to have a few bites of food. You are still able to sleep even for a few hours. You are still able to drink some water, to take a shower, to meet a friend, even if you stay silent, but it is possible for you to be in the presence of other people. Then we can say that you are most probably on the path of grief. But if there is severe disruption to your everyday life and your basic needs cannot be met, then we can explore the possibility that grief has triggered or is accompanying something that might require a bit of professional assistance or a stronger supportive network to get you through. But as long as you are still able to function, even with a bit of difficulty, we can say that you are on the path of grief.
Okay, and so basically, the support, it's okay also to seek for support. I just want to put it as a side note, no matter what it is, dear listeners, dear viewers, just seek for this for the help when it's needed, when you feel like
Mhm.
things are a little bit too much. I think it's also very important because there is still a lot of shame and stigma surrounding actually seeking for help and asking for help, be it a friend, be it a professional healthcare provider. Since we also talk about how people, let's say, can experience grief, and what have you noticed, perhaps, what people often struggle to actually put into words, or they struggle to describe, or what are the feelings that first come when we talk about grief, when someone is going through grief?
How you will experience grief is as unique as your fingerprint. So there are no two people that will experience grief the same way, even though they might share the loss. So although they might have the same event in their lives, how they will experience grief is very, very personalized spectrum that has to do with personality traits. Below the grief, you're still yourself. So your personality traits will still be there. It's the way you grew up, how people taught you to respond to loss and grief when you were young, what you noticed other people doing, what is the cultural norm surrounding grief in the place you live or the place you grew up. What are the other situations and circumstances in your life? What is your bodily health like and your mental health when the loss happened? What kind of support network you have? And a very important component is what is your outlook on life? What is your life philosophy, your spiritual beliefs, your religious beliefs? They are not a determining factor on whether grief will be softer or more intense, but they are definitely a factor in how you will interpret events and therefore how you will experience grief. And it's important to mention that in grief, there is no right and wrong, and there are no timelines, and there are no stereotypes. And it's important that people realize that it's a unique experience. They can be supported through it, but no one can actually say that what you're feeling is wrong, and we should change that.
You read my thoughts probably, because next question was also about, is there right or wrong in is there a right way to grieve? Is there a right or wrong way to go through? And is there a deadline for how long should someone grieve? For how long should someone keep the sensation, the feelings of whatever it is, right? So you already answered that, and then thank you for it. So there is no right or wrong way. We can feel all the feels we need to in certain moment, and also for how long we need.
The only intervention will be if someone is struggling to meet daily needs, like to eat, to sleep, and to rest. If these are more or less taken care of, we can support people through the journey. And also an important thing to clarify, because it has created lots of false expectations. Like most people have come across the 5 stages of grief. And occasionally they tend to believe that it is a staircase. So you start with disbelief. You don't believe that this happened. You try to negate the event. Then you get angry. Then you start attempting to somehow compromise and process. And then you come to acceptance and then you're fine. It doesn't work like that. It's not a staircase, it's a spiral. Basically, they put you in a mixer and you swirl around very, very fast. For some people, it's all the steps in one day. For some people, it's all the steps in an hour. For some people, it's all the steps in a decade. But it is a wave. So it comes and goes. There is no really getting over it. There is renegotiating life, incorporating the loss, and moving forward. But getting over it in the sense that it will go away completely and you will never have to think about it again, it is a very, very rare occasion that this will happen. And I'm not even sure it's something that we want to happen.
Mm. Yeah, I remember when my grandma passed away a few years ago. And okay, it happens. Sure, obviously there is the initial shock, and it has been already a few years. But there is still the part of me that every now and then has that little nagging thought that tells me, "But you were not there." Like, because I'm living somewhere else than my mom and my grandma, and I wasn't there in her in her last days, in her last experiences, right? And I wasn't there to say that last goodbye in that very moment. So there is still that thought, and it has been now how many years? 5 maybe. It's still there every now and then. It's not permanent, it's not persistent, but there are moments that just come up. And it's very important what you just mentioned, that it's not linear. It's not something that you just go and, hey, we're there and that's it. We never experience it again. It's a very good reminder that it things do come back, and they come back in cycles and circles. Is there anything else that we tend to misunderstand about grief, or these false expectations that have been created perhaps in one way or another?
We tend to have a lot of phrases that are not really helpful, yet they come out of our mouths so easily. And, it's socially acceptable to say them, but they don't contribute at all and they don't make the person feel supported. Like, for example, somebody loses an elderly parent and somebody responds with, "Oh, now they're gonna rest and they're not sick anymore," and blah, blah, blah. But this is not addressing the part that for the person, their mother or their father has died. And being 90 years old mother with a 70-year-old child, that child is still an orphan. It is just that we socially don't acknowledge it because we say, okay, you're 70 years old, what's the point? But the point is that it's still your mother. Also, sometimes we say that when people experience some losses that make us feel awkward, for example, a pregnancy in the early stages, people sometimes respond with, "Don't worry, you're young, you're healthy, you're going to have another one."
That's so bad.
But that almost makes it sound like what was lost is replaceable, and it is not. Absolutely not. So sometimes we say things to offer acknowledgement, but we are not offering support. So, in my opinion, sometimes if you're embarrassed or awkward, just say that I really don't know what to say to make you feel better. And I'm not even sure there is words that they're going to make this feel better. But in those cases, you can also offer your support in very tiny, practical ways. Bring a glass of water, bring a snack, give a warm blanket for the person, stay with them in silence, take their dog for a walk, feed the cats. If nothing else can be done, assisting in the mundane and the practical can also be a great relief for the people who are grieving.
I think sometimes I don't even know if it's a fear. But sometimes we don't think before we speak, and maybe the intention hasn't been bad, but in that moment for that person feeling absolutely destroyed or sad or feeling anything, it can be very very triggering, very traumatic. Like I have two examples to this. One is again related to a cat, but no matter what it is, in that moment, if you see a person just weeping completely out of this world, like not in the best mental place, and someone would tell me, but it's okay, it's just a cat, I honestly want to throw something at you. And it's not the place and time for you to comment on what it is that I have lost, and it's nothing. It's what you said. It's like you're kind of dismissing the whole experience from this person, or also as you mentioned about someone elderly who passes away. Yeah, like it's the person was already over 19 years old. Why is she upset? It was about time, basically. And I'm like, what are you saying? It was my grandmother. It's a person that have raised me. Sometimes then I wonder how then we take care of each other then. Why these kind of comments come out of someone's mouth? Maybe you can give me some kind of enlightenment on that. And where does it come from? Is it really that feeling awkward and not knowing what to do that something, I'm sorry, but sometimes stupid comes out?
I
How does
think
it
it's
work?
habit. So you saw other people doing it and it was acceptable. So you copy, feeling awkward, feeling out of place, and making an assumption that minimizing the loss will minimize the grief. It doesn't work like that. Minimizing the loss will actually intensify the grief because it's going to make the person feel even more isolated. And you can see our social bias in other ways as well. I was very, very lucky to have as a teacher in grief counseling Nancy Psimenatu, the thanatologist. And one of the very first things she taught us was to use the word die. No, they didn't pass away.
Hmm.
No, they didn't start their great journey. They died. And it is very important that we reclaim the words and we take them out of this do not touch area. It's perfectly okay to say that somebody has died. And it's also very, very important to say their name. The fact that they are no longer here does not mean that they were never here. So it doesn't matter if it was a pet, a person, a car, a house, anything that you lost. It's very important that it is called by name and that we use the words that are appropriate. Not because we want to make it painful for people, but because we want to reclaim the word, to give it back its meaning, and to normalize that, yes, it is okay to say that somebody has died. It is okay to go to a funeral. Um, it is important that we participate in rituals according to our beliefs. It doesn't have to be religious, any kind of ritual that brings us relief, and that we need to respect the grieving styles of people and try to avoid to say that, you know what helped me? Having a picture and looking at it. because it might not be the same way for the other person. And to ask their permission to share or offer guidance. Like, it's okay to say, okay, I have some ideas that might help. Would you like me to share them with you? And we wait until the person is in the headspace that they can say, yeah, actually, yeah, it would be good to hear somebody else's views on it. But this usually doesn't happen when the grief is very, very intense and all consuming. When you lose someone or something that is essential, it's almost like losing a planet in your personal universe. It's like someone that you orbited around that affected your existence in one way or another is lost. It's not realistic to expect that the universe will fall back into place in a matter of weeks or months. These things take time for our experience to recalibrate and find a new point of balance within the loss and accepting the loss or not accepting the loss and debating the loss, but it takes time, a
Hmm.
lot of it.
What you mentioned also about how to approach it and when to offer some guidance or some solutions, some advices, whatever, I think that actually can be applied to so many things. With someone going through anxiety, someone like panicking about whatever it is. Sometimes people just need you to be there rather than bombarding with do this, do that. Like, you know what helped me, as you mentioned. And I think that part, that suggestion is something that we can actually apply to so many areas. Not always we need to jump in with, oh, you know what helped me? I think that's a great reminder. Recently, also, we had this conversation, or you shared in the workshop, I think, about that it almost looks like our default state is giving advice, right? How come?
We want to fix things, but some things cannot be fixed and they need time to recalibrate. But yeah, it's unbelievable. Like, you can meet with someone at the supermarket and debate biscuits. And somehow it's gonna go to, oh, I do it like this. It's a good idea to do it like this. So it's almost like we have lost the ability to actively listen without taking out our energy to respond or resolve an issue.
Hmm. I think that's what sometimes make things awkward because we don't know what to do when someone shares something. That's why I actually dislike the question, hey, how are you? Like, do you want my actual state of being? Because you probably are not ready to listen to it, especially if it's crappy one. And you're not ready to just be there without, either tapping on my shoulder and saying it's gonna be okay and you are strong, which is another thing I hate. Don't tell me I'm strong and I will go over like through it, because also that probably will not help in any way. I don't want to be strong in that moment. Like, I actually just want to feel, and I don't want to pretend that everything is fine. Which also actually is one of my questions, like how important it is to actually let things be felt and experience them, and how linked it is with our actual authentic ways of expression. Actually, both ways, like how grief and feeling all what we need to feel can affect our authentic ways of expression, and how our authenticity can maybe help us go through grieving period or any kind of challenging period.
That's a very, very interesting question. It's almost like the holy grail of psychotherapy in general, because we assume that people know who is their authentic self. In most cases, they do not. It has been stifled for so many years in educational systems, in family dynamics, in interpersonal dynamics, that it takes a bit of digging to find out what is your authentic self. And also, the authentic self is elusive. So, what is authentic today might not be authentic tomorrow. We are a bit fluid, and we are also the synergy of every single person we have ever been. We are not unique beings. We still carry the child we were, the adolescent we were, the young adult we were. All of them exist within us. So our authentic self is elusive and fluid. So it's important to grieve in a way that feels right for us, although it might not be what other people would consider authentic. For example, somebody who is not familiar with expressing their feelings and is very uncomfortable about crying or expressing emotion, there's no point in trying to direct them into the direction of letting everything out, because it's not going to work for them. It's a mechanism that they're not familiar with. If they get there, they will get in their own time, and because they will feel a need. So in essence, we support the personal process, and we try not to be shocked when that process changes, because we might bear witness to somebody letting go, to somebody being flooded with emotion, to somebody experiencing something very intense. It's important that we make space and we hold space for them to experience it,
Hmm.
rather than be like, oh my God, what's happening now? Why are you being like this? What happened? Like, do I need to call someone? It's very, very important that we give the people space to experience it in any way that comes natural for them.
Hmm. I assume that that can also change some relationship dynamics, especially if you are at home with someone. I just assume now, and I want to understand that also a little bit, because again, if the other person is not very like fully comfortable, or both actually, if one doesn't know how to express emotions and then the other person also doesn't know how to approach it, how can that change the any kind of relationship dynamics, how grief in general can change relationships, or the way how you even look at yourself? What is the change going on there?
Especially intense losses, not necessarily death, but intense losses, they force us to re examine who we are. And then they force us to examine where we stand in our personal universes of people. And sometimes things that we manage to sweep under the rug successfully for decades will climb back up and claim the light once we are going through grief. So yes, it can change the relationship dynamics, but not necessarily in a bad way. Grief has also a way to strengthen relationships, renegotiate them, make them stronger, more resilient, healthier. But unfortunately, there's no way to know that from the beginning. So it's a bit of a journey to the unknown, because there is a lot of chaos involved between people. We can never be 100% sure about how people will react to any type of incident. So it is possible that you get through grief with a stronger network of people. It is possible that you will get through with a weaker network of people. And it is very possible that some relationships will not survive the strain of grief, whether family, friendships, personal, work, anything. And that is not necessarily a bad thing in all cases.
Hmm. It's just another, perhaps another loss on top of a loss. Could that be also seen it like that?
Yeah.
It's like adds to the emotional, how to say, let's say the bucket that piles up full of
Yes.
things, right? Okay. And but still, even with that, even when we lose, let's say when the relationships change, and hopefully for the best, but in case if they do change towards like more difficult, more awkward kind of situations, again, how to continue from where you are. Either if it's you, the person who is already grieving something, and then on top of that you have to experience something else. How can you move on from that? Or do you have to move on? Like, what do you allow yourself, what should we allow ourselves to feel, to experience, and how to be with it?
I would have to say that there is no right and wrong in this case as well. So
Mm,
people will choose a narrative and a path that they believe is the right one for them. When both people are committed to attempting to fix things, sometimes it's a good idea to have the help of a professional to mediate or facilitate the process. In some cases, it will not be necessary, so people will find a new kind of balance among them. But there is no wrong and right. It's a very, very subjective experience. So our let's say goal should be to support the people through their choices,
mm,
regardless of whether we think they're right or wrong based on our moral values or our life experiences. And I think that's what makes it very challenging, because it's very easy to support someone that your values, beliefs, and choices align. But it gets very, very demanding when we need to show our support in contexts that our values differ, our choices differ, and our life experiences differ.
mm,
And can we do that? Should we do that? Is it good for us to do so? These are all questions that do not have one single answer for everyone.
mm. In this case, in this or in any other case, actually, is the person, let's say the support person or the support group, especially because we know that everyone is going through something one way or another, right? And everyone is having their stresses, their anxieties, their fears. In that case, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, will trying to be strong for someone can actually do more harm in way. Like, let's say I'm just trying to hold it together no matter what, just to keep the peace, and just, let's say I know someone is going through something perhaps even more grave than I am, right? So should I just keep it together, and just for the sake of peace and calm and sensitive environment? And how does that, can it work? Can it backfire to the point where there's no going back? What do you think?
Yes, it can backfire. Yes, it can work. So all the options are open.
Mm,
However, in cases where people will make a choice to take on a role of support and stability while going through something on their own, I would say that it is important for them to have their own support network and their own support resources, even if they come outside of the relationship that is currently under grief or strain. So it is a choice, and it is okay to say that I will try to stay strong in this, but you need to seek support and make sure that you are also supported, even if that support cannot come from the person that is grieving at the moment. On the other hand, it's also completely okay if somebody says that I do not have capacity in this moment to support anyone other than myself. That is also okay, provided that you are mindful to encourage the person to seek an alternate point of support if you are not able to offer it.
mm.
So as long as people are being supported, they don't have to be supported by each other necessarily if the circumstances do not allow this to happen.
Think sometimes in this case, especially if someone tells you, look, I can't right now, like there's also lots going on for me, and I can't really be there for you right now, like fully, because it actually damages myself. I think there sometimes it's a lot to do with our ego as well. And like at least that's my personal opinion here, and my personal observations, that sometimes we're not really ready to accept that someone else, especially that we expect from someone else to act in certain way or send a message in a certain way or whatever it is, right? Yeah, that sometimes it's like, oh, but they didn't do it. And I know that I sometimes assume it as well, like, but why they didn't do it? Why they didn't send a message, or why they didn't, I don't know, talk or whatever it is. So I think there's a lot to do with our own ego and our own expectations towards other people as well, right? Even in the moment when we are struggling. So yeah, that's just
And
my
a
take on.
guilt. Also, guilt will play a role, like feeling guilty, feeling uneasy about not meeting other people's expectations. So, yeah, it can get very complicated. And the thing that sometimes help, although I wouldn't call it like scientific advice, sometimes when both people are struggling, it's okay for a bit. Again, disclaimer, this is not scientific advice. This is personal experience. Sometimes it helps to commiserate, to not go into the mood of supporting each other, just accepting that we are both in a bucket of crap and at least we have a bit of nice company in this situation.
Mm.
So even that and venting together and saying how bad and shitty everything is, even that can be a tiny sense of a relief. Trauma bonding is still bonding, not the healthiest kind, but occasionally it will happen as a way to manage something that is very, very difficult.
When you know, you know. I will just say to this. You mentioned also the guilt. And when we talk about guilt in grief, I also thought about joy and happiness in the process and how to deal with that guilt of, let's say, yes, someone died or you, I don't know, got fired or something. But then, although there is the process of sadness, fears, anything, you also experience the joy and happiness, and then you kind of get yourself like back into like, oh, but I should feel sad or something. Maybe the joy is not sorry, maybe the joy is not the thing I should be feeling right now. How do you deal with those feelings, and what would you say to someone who tries to like minimize the intake of joy because they are in the process of grieving?
Embrace it. If you were lucky enough to be able to find a glimpse of hope, of joy, of happiness in the middle of darkness, embrace it, nurture it. It's the proof that things will eventually change. It does not mean that you're not grieving enough. It does not mean that you are being avoidant or not caring or anything. It means that life is showing you that things will change. And that is an important lesson because when we are well, we don't keep it in mind, at least not in a healthy way. So things will change. That's the only universal constant we have. Things will change. So even in the darkness, there will be glimpses of the other side. We embrace them. They are proof we are alive.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. It seems like it is the part of that spiral, those circle cycles, right? I do have a question that I remembered about yesterday, and I thought of asking you as well, because it's also very important for me as a late ADHDer, lately diagnosed ADHDer, and I know that we perceive emotions more intensively. I know for myself, I have trouble identifying sometimes emotions and what it is that I'm actually feeling and identify what I'm feeling. So, because grief is this complex combination of emotions and combination of experiences. How does someone who is in the neurodiverse spectrum, how does someone experience grief then? How is it different from someone who is not ADHD, or, for example, or autistic? How is it different?
Even if we wanted, we couldn't answer that because we would fall in the same trap that we are trying to avoid. Trying to describe the experience of grief for a range, a spectrum of neurodiversity is not making justice to neurodiversity or to grief. So there is no blanket statement about how it will be different or how it will be similar. What we know is that statistically, from the aggregate data, it will be differentiated from the neurotypical experience. But if you take into account that even the neurotypical experience is very diverse, then trying to pinpoint what kind of variation is due to neurodiversity and what kind of variation is due to life experience, personal experience, it can be slippery. However, we do know that particularly for ADD, ADHD, there seems to be the wave is a bit shorter and more steep. So when they feel it very, very intensely. And when they don't feel it, they almost go back to normal. So if the neurotypical wave is like this, the neurodiverse ADD, ADHD might look for some people like this. But again, that is a bit of an overgeneralization.
Mm-hmm.
It would have a lot to do with the personal diagnosis, the kind, and how it has been experienced throughout life and in which kind of support network. But we can say there are some differences that can be attributed to the diversity side of things.
Okay, it for me again, from my personal experience, it does sound very, very relevant and relatable. I have noticed that, yeah, like whatever it is that I'm experiencing, it spikes and then it drops, and then it's like nothing happened. Even with the hardest, saddest challenges, except burnout and depression, that was a little bit more difficult to just spike and let go. Those were lingering there, and actually not just lingering, they were physically present in every single thing I was doing and experiencing. But like, let's say again, I will use my grandma's death. That, okay, I accepted the fact, yes, I cried, yes, I was sad, yes, I was feeling guilty that I wasn't there, and it happened over a couple of days. But then there was also this kind of rational mind that just turned back on and was like, okay, I need to do this. I need to do this for, let's say, for the funeral or whatever. I need to pick the coffin, whatever it is. And it was very rational. I will blame it, in air quotes, blame it to the fact that we are problem solvers. And in the worst cases, like when shit is absolutely hitting the fan, we will just act very strategically. And there will be no emotions, nothing. When it is milder, then yes, I will be feeling all kinds of emotions and all kinds of senses of waves of the emotions. But once that is kind of past, and also the fact that when we don't see someone or something, it's like it doesn't exist, you know? So again, from my personal experience, I feel that might be something that affects the grief as well. I'm not diminishing it. It's not the intention here. I'm not trying to do that. I'm just reflecting on my own personal experience there. It's like, that's it. Okay. It happened, you know. It's weird. It's weird saying it as well like that, but don't come after me. Okay. It's
No,
again,
no, no.
it's
I
how
think
I
it's a
have felt.
part of understanding how, although we will share some similar background, the experience will be unique. And grief is a neurochemical process. It's also a cognitive process. So it's not only an emotional process, it's a bodily process. So
Hmm.
different bodies, different minds will process it and experience it differently. And there is no right or wrong or better or worse.
You mentioned like that it's actually a bodily experience as well. And is there anything that where we can feel the grief actually as a physical sensation in our body?
So some people will experience grief primarily in their stomach, like feeling it tight. Some people will experience it in their muscles, like feeling very, very tense. For some people, grief will come as tiredness,
Mm.
like feeling a feeling of exhaustion throughout the body. For some people, it will come as agitation, feeling it impossible to stay in one place, feeling it impossible to lay down. But definitely, the body will experience grief and manifest it, even in the expressions, in the way we position ourselves in a room, the way we talk, the way we stand.
Mm.
Grief will be manifesting in the same way that joy is manifesting, anger is manifesting. Grief is no different than everything else. But it's important to remember that when your body is, on quotes, refusing to obey your orders, it is never, never, almost 100% it's the case. It's trying to protect you and not harm you. The
Mm.
cases in which your body is trying to harm you, they are very, very, very slim and on the spectrum of disease. But when your body is refusing to wake up on the day of the funeral, it's not trying to cause you trouble. It's signaling that you are very, very tired and you need to rest. Our bodies work in our favor. It's important to allow them to guide us where we need to go. So when we feel tired, it's important that we rest. When we feel a bit of hunger, it's important that we grab a couple of bites. Even if we don't feel hungry, a small bite of something, a small bit of chocolate, some honey. It's important that we make sure that our body is supported in that process.
Mm.
Even though it might be hard, it's very, very important that the body, the mind, and the soul, they are all supported in the process. And we don't say that the body is not important right now because there are bigger things happening.
What can happen if we try to resist the grief, either in the mental space or on a physical level?
It will wait patiently for a time that we are more open to experience it, and it will come back then. But unfortunately, there's no way to escape it, or fortunately, actually, because without grief, there would be no evolution, mental, psychological, cognitive. If we didn't experience loss, everything would be stagnant and everything would be the same always, and we wouldn't grow as individuals. So it's a good thing that you cannot avoid it because it's also a testament to the bond you shared.
Mm.
If there is no emotion associated with the loss, then we need to go and see what kind of bond that was. And in some cases, the proof that something in there was valuable can be manifesting in the amount of pain experienced when that was lost.
I saw recently a quote by famous actor Andrew something. I don't know. I think he was a Spider-Man at one point. I don't know. But he said a quote about grief that something along the lines that if you grieve, it's like the love that you didn't have a chance to share. And I felt it so beautifully. It resonated so much. Is that love you didn't have a chance or you won't have a chance to share. And that just made kind of a very beautiful overview, like a look at what grief actually is, that it's not only the sadness or anger, but it can also be perceived as love. Beautiful. My last question, maybe two. So, one thing I would like you to summarize once more: what are a couple of do's and don'ts for someone who is right now supporting someone else going through a grief process, or either right now or who will be, or who has been going through that? So what are a couple of do's, couple of don'ts uh, when being the support for someone?
Ask them how they would like to be supported. Assist them in making sure that their basic needs are met. Also, seek support for yourself when you need it. Don't try to shoulder too much on your own. And remember that beyond the grief or together with the grief, they're still the same person you know. And try not to minimize the experience. Um, Nobody stopped being sad because they were told don't be sad. Try to allow them the space and time to process everything. And if the situation becomes a bit too much, seek out support and or professional help to make sure that you are able to meet the needs of yourself and to offer your support in a healthy way to somebody else who needs it.
Now, for someone who might be going through a grief process of any kind, what would be, let's say, one thing? If you want a couple of things, what would be at least this one thing you would say to someone who is going through a grief process right now?
It will get better. What you're feeling now will not be what you will be feeling forever.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Irinimu. This part we're closing. We're closing our session, our conversation on grief. I'll try to summarize what we have discussed, like some couple of things that were also kind of new and surprising for me. Was also this anticipatory grief, that we can actually grieve not only something that has happened, but also something that will happen. And it sounds to me like this imaginary scenario, right? That we're already anticipating that how we will feel when we lose this XYZ, right? And that the grief is something that is here and now, and the brain doesn't really understand it's something that has happened or has not happened yet. So that was interesting. Also, that grief, how we experience grief, is also affected by how we have been raised, how we are dealing with emotions, how we have seen others dealing with emotions and loss of any kind, and the cultural background as well. And very important that there is no right or wrong when it comes to grieving. And I believe what I liked a lot was when you said that it's best to say that you don't know how to support someone rather than just trying to say something that at the end will come through as arrogant or unintentionally, but that might come out as something awkward and maybe will make the other person feel even worse. So that's that. There will be shorts and highlights from the conversation, also with these beautiful summaries and quotes by Irene. Now, to close the conversation, I will try to make a tradition here at MeTimePod, where I'll be using cards that I got the chance to learn about last year. Irene knows these cards very well. Do you want to explain a little bit what these cards are about? Since I have you here.
In the previous year, we had the chance to work with some extremely knowledgeable partners in a small scale Erasmus Plus project to create a board game to facilitate connection. So we have a very nice game that prompts people to engage in a more meaningful conversation. So I'm guessing Eliza will pick one. So fingers crossed for me that it's going to be one of the lighter ones and not life-changing commitments.
Well, actually, yeah. So there are three colors for those of who are not familiar with. We have three in the game. It's levels of difficulty or levels of depth of conversation, right? So the green ones are a little bit lighter, perhaps more fun ones. Blue ones are the medium level, and the pink ones are perhaps going a little bit more into the soul, if you want to. I will give you a choice. Which color you want?
I'm feeling risky. Let's go with the pink one.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. So, just tell me when.
Now,
Okay. So, what changed? Nice one, actually. What changed the way you relate to yourself?
loss. Loss. That's an easy one. I think loss forced me, in its many forms, forced me to renegotiate who I am and to venture outside what I thought I should be. So, loss for me was a very, very important part in deciding that I needed to explore other versions of myself.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for opening up. Thank you for
Thank you.
sharing all your experience and your knowledge on the topic. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything. Thank you for being here. Also for some of my experiences, and thank you everyone who has been listening or even watching. Like, share, subscribe. Those are the three things I guess I need to remind you guys. This is the one of the first episodes. I'm still learning this, so just hang on, bear with me. I'm trying to figure this out, all right? So let's try to figure out things together. I'll be here being curious about a bunch of different topics. So just follow along, and I hope you can learn something new. You can help yourself in any way, and or share with a friend if you know a friend who needs to hear something we have shared today or any day. I think that's that. Thank you for being part of the MeTimePod, and see you next time. Ciao!